land-grant institutions, 130 years of building equity in agriculture will come to order. Welcome and thank you for joining today's hearing. After brief opening remarks, members will receive testimony from today's witnesses, and then the hearing will be open to questions. Members will be recognized in order of seniority, alternating between majority and minority members. When you are recognized, you will be asked to unmute your microphone and will have 5 minutes to ask your questions or make a comment. If you are not speaking, I ask that you remain muted in order to minimize background noise. In order to get as many questions as possible, the timer will stay consistently visible on your screen. Brandon, I will ask you to share in the chat, if possible, the order of members so that I can be aware of who and who is not available for us. It's my honor in this hearing to yield my opening statement to the Vice Chair of the Agriculture Committee, Congresswoman Alma Adams, who is also the co-chair of the Congressional Bipartisan Historically Black Colleges and Universities Caucus. She will provide an opening statement to frame today's discussions. And thank you so much to my colleague, Alma Adams, for all the work that you have done over the many decades in education, the support that you have for public education, and especially for historically Black colleges and universities.
Thank you, Chair Plaskett. It's good to be here, and happy birthday to our 1890s. I'm grateful for your strong leadership, Chair Plaskett of the Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research Subcommittee, and also for your foresight in calling this critically important hearing on 1890 land-grant institutions' 130 years of building equity in agriculture. Participating in today's hearing is special for me because 5 years ago, when I first came to Congress, I had the honor of addressing the 1890s during an event celebrating their 125th anniversary. So today we've come full circle. This subcommittee has jurisdiction over matters that are related to research and education and extension and issues that are central to the mission of this country's land-grant university system. That system aimed at expanding post-secondary opportunities in agriculture and mechanical arts was established following the passage of the first Morrill Act of 1862. And while these institutions advanced agricultural education and increased the capacity of our agricultural sector, Black students were barred from easily accessing these opportunities. So 28 years after the passage of the first Morrill Act, Congress passed the second Morrill Act of 1890. This legislation prohibited racial discrimination in determining admission and leading to the creation of the 1890 land-grant university system and expanding educational opportunities for Black students. And since that time, the 19 HBCUs that make up the 1890 system have continued their mission of advancing equity in agriculture through research, education, and extension aimed at serving racial minorities and historically underserved communities. In a year that's been marked by a surge of support for racial justice and a pandemic that has disproportionately impacted communities of color, I believe that the mission of the 1890 land-grant system is more important than ever. Congress and the members of this committee are committed to our support of the 1890 land grants, as well as the students and the rural communities that it serves. This commitment was evident when looking back to the 2018 Farm Bill. And thanks to the leadership of Chairman Peterson and the strong advocacy of incoming Chairman Scott and myself and other members of this committee, we were able to pass a strong bipartisan Farm Bill that included mandatory funding for scholarships to 1890 institutions, established 3 centers of excellence to be led by 1890 universities, and corrected an inequity in the carryover of extension funds from year to year. So I'm proud that these provisions were included in the 2018 Farm Bill, but we still have a lot that we can do to support students and researchers. I'd like to just take a moment to shine a spotlight on the important work that those students and professionals are doing it at my alma mater twice, North Carolina A&T State University, which is the largest public HBCU in the nation. Earlier this year, they received a grant from USDA to establish the Center of Excellence to motivate and educate for achievement, dedicated to encouraging and supporting young people from underrepresented minority groups to pursue studies and careers in food and agriculture and natural resources. But despite their decades of success in supporting small and minority farmers and conducting cutting-edge agricultural research, A&T faces many of the same challenges as the institutions before us today. And I'm excited that they're here. And I look forward to hearing the testimony from our esteemed panel of witnesses on the issues and the others. And I thank them in advance for taking the time to be with us this morning and for all that they're doing for students. So I hope that we get to hear your thoughts on the effectiveness of the implementation of the 2018 Farm Bill provisions, the additional areas for collaboration between Congress and the 1890 system, and how your institutions have been impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. This subcommittee and the committee as a whole must have a solid understanding of your perspective as we look ahead to the next Congress and the next Farm Bill. Madam Chair, thank you so very much, and I yield back at this time.
Thank you very much for your opening remarks. And I just want to let the committee know that in consultation with the ranking member and pursuant to Rule 1E, I want to make members of the subcommittee aware that other members of the full committee may join us today. I'd now like to welcome the ranking member, Mr. Thompson, for his opening statement.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Chair Plaskett, for convening this hearing today. Thank you, Congresswoman Adams, for your opening remarks and your leadership with these wonderful institutions of learning and your leadership in leading for the support for them. Now, I'm pleased to be celebrating such an important occasion, August 30th of 2020. While 2020 wasn't the most banner year in all of our lives for different reasons, there were some incredible milestones to be celebrated, and that was August 30th, marking the 130th anniversary of the enactment of the Morrill Act of 1890, also known as the Second Morrill Act. And this law, which led to the establishment of our 1890 land-grant universities, that today number 19 in total. When we were celebrating the 125th anniversary in 2015, the House Agriculture Committee was in the early stages of developing what is now the 2018 Farm Bill. And during that time, we heard testimony from several university presidents about the continuing contributions and successes of their institutions and how Congress can continue to improve their capacity to provide agriculture education extension and research. And I'm proud that the 2018 Farm Bill delivered several wins for the 1890 land-grant universities, including addressing a funding carryover disparity that treated 1890 extension programs differently than the other extension counterparts. The Farm Bill also notably established a grant program to award scholarships for students at 1890 land-grant institutions, a priority I know several on this committee worked hard to deliver, including my friend and future chairman, David Scott. Our nation's land-grant system, especially the 1890 land-grant university, will continue to play a pivotal role in the training and educating the next generation of farmers and ranchers and other agricultural professionals. Their research and extension mission is a critical component of American agriculture and is envied around the world. Now, we're fortunate to have several leaders from the 1890 land-grant universities with us today, and I look forward to a productive discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I would like to acknowledge that the ranking member of our full committee, Mr. Conway, is also with us. Thank you for your leadership and for being with us for this important hearing. Once again, I want to welcome all of our witnesses and thank you for being here today. I request that other members submit their opening statements for the record so the witnesses may begin their testimony and to ensure that there is ample time for questioning. At this time, I will introduce our first witness, Dr. Mccola Abdullah is the 14th president of Virginia State University. Mr. Abdullah has served in this role since February 2016, and he is an alumnus of Howard University and Northwestern University. Doctor, you have your time now for your opening statement. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Chairman Stacy Pleskett. Thank you to Ranking Member Glenn Thompson. And of course, thank you to Agricultural Vice Chair Alma Adams, and also members of the committee, my fellow 1890 presidents, and other guests who are here today for this opportunity to speak about the 1890 land grant university system and the very important role that 1890 universities play in the future of this nation. I am Dr. Mccola Abdullah, 14th president of Virginia State and the current chair of the Association of Public and Land Grant Universities Council of 1890 Universities. The council is composed of the presidents of the 19 Black land grant institutions. These institutions were born out of a time of racial separation and exclusion, fueled by segregation and racial intolerance, and they were built upon the pillars of access, opportunity, inclusive excellence, and persistence. The 1890s were founded to provide equitable education for all students, especially Blacks and other minorities in former slave-holding states. And they are distinguished from other institutions of higher learning, not only because of their commitment to teach the practical disciplines of agriculture, engineering, and life sciences and nutrition to minority and underserved populations, but because of the important agriculture research that they conduct on behalf of their state, the county, the country, and the globe. The 1890s are also unique because of their mission to extend their teaching beyond the campus walls to the citizens of their respective states, especially again to minorities and socioeconomically disadvantaged people, so communities can prosper and grow. Nearly 4 months ago, on August 30th, 2020, the United States Congress recognized the 130th anniversary of the signing of the Second Morrill Act, which created these 19 historically Black land grant universities. This was not only a celebration, but an important reminder of the vital role that our 19 universities continue to play today. Indeed, the unprecedented challenges that 2020 has presented us with are tied to the very foundation of the 1890 land grant system, and we are perfectly positioned with your support to be at the forefront of developing innovative solutions to those challenges. I stand before you today to thank you not only for this past support, but also for your future commitment to the growth and expansion of the 1890 land grant system, a commitment necessary to meet the challenges we've seen unfold this year and for those still yet to come tomorrow, a commitment that will further the economic prosperity and health of families, businesses, and communities that we serve, and a commitment that would mean your support of federal appropriation increases in FY 2021 and beyond. At my own institution, Virginia State University, I can share, uh, I can share by example, excuse me, at my own institution, I can share, for example, that the proposed appropriation increases to our fiscal year 2021 budget and beyond would allow us to make great strides forward in agricultural research, teaching, and outreach in the following ways. Our food and ag research program at Virginia State is funded by the 1890 Evans-Allen Act of 1977. Those Evans-Allen funds have led towards hundreds of scientific breakthroughs in the areas of plant and soil sciences, food science, and small ruminants that include priorities for underserved populations. Those Evans-Allen funds have direct impacts on citizens and businesses of our state every day. Another part of VSU's 1890 land grant mission is its Virginia Cooperative Extension Program. This program brings our university-based research and knowledge to the homes and businesses of Virginia citizens, especially minorities and socio disadvantaged people. This science-based, non-traditional education strengthens our food and agricultural industry, enhances the health of families and businesses, and fosters stable communities for underserved populations. It is this 1890s cooperative extension program that allowed U.S. Army veteran and stage 4 cancer survivor Rob Davis to transition after 30 years in the military to a successful career as a small niche crop farmer in our state. And we made these strides despite the 1890 land grant system receiving only 25.8% of the Evans-Allen's funds authorized by the federal government, and only 18% of congressionally authorized 20% of 1890 Extension Program funds. Meanwhile, again, our 1862 land grant partners enjoy a significantly larger percentage of total funding per their Smith-Lever Act allocation and larger state matches for cooperative extension. I stand before you to testify that on behalf of all of the 1890 land grant presidents, that we are very grateful for the FY 2020 appropriations and that we fully support a close in the gap of funding percentage the 1890s received for ag research and extension compared to our 1862 counterparts. The 1890 land grant system was founded to be an equal partner in providing agricultural education, research, and extension to the citizens of our states. And we have repeatedly demonstrated the impacts we make in doing so. And we are perfectly positioned to address the unprecedented challenges that our communities are facing today. Increases in these and other related 1890 budget line items will play a critical role in helping to attract and retain instructional faculty, creative and innovative researchers and extension specialists, and inquisitive food and ag science scholars. They will also allow the 1890s to make long overdue upgrades to our aged 20th century infrastructure, enabling us to deliver 21st century programs and solutions to limited resource and minority and underserved audiences. In addition to budget line increases, I'm also asking the House Ag Committee to support the following: to reinstitute the 1890 USDA Task Force, ensuring the membership of senior decision-making agency representatives and included in the 2023 Farm Bill, to increase the opportunity and support for greater access for 1890 institutions to become an integral part of institutions that receive SNAP-Ed funds. This is the largest federal nutrition education program that is directed at poor and limited resource families. Presently, fewer
Dr.
than...
Abdullah,
Yes.
your time has expired. Some time, if you could just wrap up very quickly, all of your written testimony will be taken in.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Well, I will say this in closing, that I want to thank our Congressman, Donald McKeachin, and all of you for your continued support and commitment to Virginia State University and the entire 1890 land grant system. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdullah. Next, I'll recognize Dr. Paul Jones. Dr. Jones is currently serving as the 10th president of Fort Valley State University. Dr. Jones has served in this position since December 2015. He is a graduate of Utah State University and Colorado State University. Thank you so much for being with us, and welcome.
Thank you, Chairwoman Plaskett, Ranking Member Thompson, and members of the House Committee on Agriculture. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. Again, I'm Paul Jones, and I serve as the 10th president of Fort Valley State, which is located in Middle Georgia. As you can imagine, like every part of our ecosystem, COVID-19 has presented all of us with tremendous challenges. Yet it's also provided opportunities for us to refocus our institutions as we move forward. After abruptly moving online in March and completing our online in the summer, we safely moved to a traditional in-person environment. The university put in extraordinary safety measures to ensure a safe return for staff, faculty, and students. Despite the many challenges we face, not only were we able to keep our campus safe during the fall, the university safely when reopened, experienced its largest enrollment since fall 2012. A major part of that enrollment success, I should say, is directly attributed to your passing of the 2018 Farm Bill. The passing of this bill not only supported much needed agricultural scholarships funding for students, but it helped to support 3 new 1890 Centers of Excellence carryover provision, and an important provision that monitors the 1890 matching funds to ensure all of our 18 states are meeting this 1-to-1 match obligation for the entire 1890 land grant system. Another important factor of enrollment stability and success was your passing of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act and the CARES Act relief funds for HBCUs, minority serving institutions, and colleges and universities serving low-income students. This support has enabled the university to significantly enhance our technology capacity, purchase valuable personal protection equipment and testing, increasing our testing capacity, eliminate significant deficits due to the refunds mid-year, and to mitigate large-scale employee reductions or layoffs. You know, the 1890 land grant system is a tremendous asset to higher education and has, we believe, much greater capacity to help solve the many problems of our country and beyond. The pandemic of the virus and the social challenges our nation has faced help put a much greater spotlight on the acute health, economic, and other disparities we are facing as a country today. These disparities are particularly true for the students we serve, which represent 80% of Pell Grant recipients. I believe greater focus and support on the 1890 system will enable us to play a broader role in solving problems throughout the communities we all serve, particularly in underserved communities and the rural communities. Support for our research and extension agenda would aid in building greater capacity. For example, we are in the process of establishing a Center for Agriculture, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship, which is vitally important to helping us to build that infrastructure and to provide researchers and faculty and business owners with the opportunity to move forward in entrepreneurship venture. This center is a key on our agenda, and we're thankful to the funding that we've received. The hallmark of our rigorous research programs is collaboration. Whether it's to work with a global team of the 65 scientists and 30 research institutions, which has decoded and sequenced the pearl millet genome, revealing critical heat scoping strategies in this grain crop, or the specialty crops which has demonstrated that Schreiner has anti-cancer properties and can reduce the tumor size in the rat brain, or our collaborative work with the University of Georgia or other several USDA agricultural research service labs to take characterize the whitefly infestation in fruit and vegetable crops in southeastern United States. All of these are important in our collaborative efforts, and it is our pathway forward. We hope that we have continued support. We look forward to continued support to improve the infrastructure, the broadband infrastructure, and the critical mission that we serve as 1890 institutions to support the rural communities and underserved communities. Again, I want to pause there because of time. I'm grateful for this opportunity to address you today, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your testimony. Our third witness is Dr. Felicia Nave, the president of Alcorn State University. Dr. Nave has served in this role since July 2019. She received her undergraduate degree from Alcorn State, and she is also an alum of the University of Toledo. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Chairwoman Plaskett and Ranking Member Thompson and members of the House Committee on Agriculture for the opportunity to provide testimony today. I also want to extend a thank you to Congresswoman Alma Adams for your continued support of the HBCU community and advocating for legislation and investments that build the capacity of our institution. As mentioned, I am Felicia M. Nave, and I have the esteemed pleasure of serving as the 20th president and first female of my alma mater, Alcorn State University. Alcorn has a long and rich tradition of educating students and preparing graduates for a lifetime of success. On behalf of our nearly 3,300 students, more than 600 faculty and staff, and over 25,000 alumni, again, thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for the opportunity to provide comments regarding the 1890 Land Grant Institution's 130 years of building equity in agriculture, and more specifically, Alcorn State University. Alcorn State University was founded in 1871 and traces its heritage back to both the 1862 and 1890 Morrill Acts, Alcorn is unique among the 1890 institutions because it is the only HBCU found with a land grant purpose under the first Morrill Act, making it America's oldest public, historically Black land grant institution. Also, Alcorn is Mississippi's second oldest state-supported institution. Alcorn's mission is framed around helping students overcome the challenges before them. We attract a racially and ethically diverse student body that currently represents 36 states and 7 countries, as well as students from varied socioeconomic backgrounds, with nearly 30% of first generation and over 70% of Pell Grant eligible students. Alcorn has demonstrated its resilience and commitment to providing affordable and equitable educational opportunities. As is the case with many professions, equity is a topic that continues to present a number of opportunities and challenges in agriculture. As urban centers become more exciting for today's college students, we must work harder to recruit them to rural areas of the country. It can be difficult for students to choose to major in ag-related fields if they have not participated in 4-H club or have not been impacted or affected by extension programming in their local community. Having diversity in the profession is not only a positive for our students, but also for the agricultural workforce. Our students bring their diverse perspectives and experiences to the workforce, which may often be overlooked if they are not present. Also, this diversity provides for economic mobility for future generations who historically have been disadvantaged. At Alcorn, our scholarships have been helpful in attracting students to ag majors, and dozens of them have done very well, achieving respectable roles at the national and state levels. However, we must do a better job at tracking the workforce outcomes for these students. Despite the current challenges presented by the COVID-19 virus, our faculty, staff, and extension agents have continued to find innovative ways to support students, the community, and farmers who lack the necessary resources to deal with the pandemic. Specifically, our extension services have provided programming on healthy eating habits for children and programming for parents related to helping them talk to their children about COVID-19. Yet with our limited resources, we continue to do more with less in order to fill the widening gaps in the areas of health disparities, food insecurities, and workforce development. However, as this pandemic continues to ravage our country, gains that many in this room have fought for generations are threatened. We have yet to fully focus on the residual impact of COVID-19 and think about not just those obvious impacts, but the underlying strain as well. The 1890s are very grateful for the funding provided to support scholarships for students interested in pursuing careers in agriculture, as well as the Centers of Excellence for which Alcorn participates in too. The future of American agriculture, farming, and ranching rests in the future of its 1890 land grants. To understand this statement, one must look back and reflect on what we have done to see a vision for what tomorrow can look like. As I alluded to earlier, equity and impact are central to the conversation around the future of 1890 land grant institutions. As many of you know, whether an institution is an 1862 or 1890 land grant, the expectation is that high quality academic programs and relevant extension programs are available to support the citizenry. Again, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony. Thank you to your staff and my staff for helping prepare for today's event.
Thank you so much for your testimony, Dr. Nave. We will now proceed to hearing, let me see, that is all the testimony for this time. So thank you all. At this time, members will be recognized for questions in order of seniority, alternating between majority and minority members. You will be recognized for 5 minutes each in order to allow us to get in as many questions as possible. Please keep your microphones muted until you are recognized in order to minimize background noise. I first wanted to ask Mr. Conway, do you have any questions that you would like to ask at this time? I will defer to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. No, I don't. I just want to thank our witnesses and on their behalf, as well as all of the schools that they represent across the entire spectrum of the 1890 schools for the great work they're doing. And I have no questions, and I yield back. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, sir. I will now open up for my own questions at this time. I want to thank the witnesses for their testimony. And this topic is a family affair for me. As some of the members on the committee may know, one of my sons attended the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, is a graduate from there. And on his father's side, he is the third generation in his family to have attended that institution. When this committee last held a hearing on the 1890 system, we focused on recruitment efforts and how to bring more young people into agriculture. I want to explore that topic a little bit more. This summer, the board of directors of the University of the Virgin Islands in my district, also a land grant institution, unanimously voted to establish a school of agriculture. I believe this program will be incredibly valuable for our local students, for local farmers who already work with the university on research and extension issues, and maybe even to bring in students from other areas who would not have thought to attend. From your perspective, how can we, and this is open to any of our witnesses, how can we work to encourage students to enroll in a new school of agriculture? For the Virgin Islands, of course, that would be a unique experience dealing with agriculture in a Caribbean and tropical climate. What types of recruitment efforts have you found to be most effective, and how can we expand those to bring more young people into this industry through our land grant universities? And how will the establishment of a formal ag education program support other aspects of a university's research and extension efforts with local farmers and the community?
Thank you so much for your question, Madam Chair. First, I want to acknowledge the president of UAPB, Dr. Lawrence Alexander, for his wonderful work. I'm sure you would want him to get acknowledged for his family connection to youth. We have an agricultural education program at Virginia State University. We are very keen on recruiting young people into careers in agriculture because we think it's so critically important. If I'm being honest, I think one of the challenges is that in our country now, with so many who don't grow up in rural environments, that we have to continually to educate them to help them understand how important our food and agricultural system is in our country and how they can play an important difference. And also how diverse and broad the opportunities are that exist in food and agriculture, whether you're working on the business processing side or working on the food side, that there are wonderful and incredible careers that exist in food and agriculture. In that vein, Representative David Scott, of course, who will be a chair, has really shown a strong level of support for our institutions by helping to establish the 1890 Scholars Program. That Scholars Program, we believe, goes a long way towards really letting young people know that not only do we have fantastic opportunities for them to come to school, but we also have financial resources to really attract them, to get them excited to go into the careers that we believe are the careers of the 21st century. So I really appreciate you asking that question. I believe that our students, our undergraduate students in particular, are really the future of our land grant system. They're the future researchers, the future extension specialists, and making sure that we have strong and vibrant education programs is going to pay great dividends down the road.
And I would just like to add to, thank you, Madam Congresswoman Plaskett, for that question. In addition to scholarship, it's also about pipeline development, the continued support of our extension efforts through 4-H and the like ag discovery programs to educate students about the many career opportunities in ag, and making sure that our programs are providing more a more broader scope of the career options in ag, and that the programs are transitioning to some of the more sexy areas of ag, such as drone technology, AI, because all of those career fields opportunities are available to students. They just may not be aware. So in addition to scholarships, it's about program development, pipeline development, and making sure that they have access to internships and cooperative experiences so they have a greater and more in-depth understanding of what their career choice is all about.
Thank you. One of the other issues that I think is very important, one that other members on the committee have also been discussing, is my university, the University of the Virgin Islands, which as a historically Black university supports local students in rural communities with the focus on socially disadvantaged communities. They have struggled in the past to get matching fund waivers from NIFA following natural disasters. Like many 1890 institutions, they often fall short of receiving the one-to-one matching fund requirements from local legislatures, which do not and oftentimes have the funding to be able to do that. Recognizing that this is primarily a state and local issue, how does this funding shortfall impact schools within your system, or does it? Have you seen that happen? And how can we work with our state partners to best address the matching fund issue to ensure that our students are supported and equity is maintained between institutions?
I'll be glad to address that, Congressman Plaskett, initially, and allow my colleagues to address it further. In the state of Georgia, we're very fortunate to have the one-to-one match. It's not always been the case, but I can tell you it's a significant difference in our ability to serve our community and the way in which we can serve our community when you have the one-to-one match there and you're not returning resources or requesting a waiver. I would say that, I think it's critically, it's important, the part of the provision that's in the new farm bill that really calls on USDA to report those states so that at least there is information that's shared widely with Congress for those states that are not matching the fund. As I mentioned earlier in my testimony, the 1890 system has tremendous capacity. And when you're not receiving minimally the one-to-one match, it really shortchanges our communities. And so I think this is vitally important that we address this. Congress does take a look at what's happening because I believe that there are several states that are still not matching at the one-to-one level.
Thank you. I am very much out of time, so I would now invite Mr. Thompson for your 5 minutes.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, thank you so much. And thank you to each one of our witnesses for being on the panel today, but more importantly, for your leadership at your respective institutions of learning. Greatly appreciated. I really appreciate you sharing your testimony. I mentioned in my opening statement the wins that we were able to secure in the 2018 Farm Bill. And I know my friends on the Appropriations Committee have been committed to get the land grant system, especially the 1890 land grants, additional resources. But looking to future years, what can the House Committee on Agriculture do to help you continue to meet your mission to your students and to the agriculture industry, and quite frankly, to rural America, who benefits to a large degree in the end? And this question really is open to the entire panel for anyone that would like to provide a response.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your question. As you just mentioned, we are very excited and thankful for the support that we have gotten from Congress and from the federal government. But that there are some places where we believe that increasing resources at our institutions can increase the return on the investment that we've had. One of those ways, again, we receive about 25.8% of the funds that, excuse me, we are authorized to receive up to 30% of the total hatch funds for Evans Allen's funds, which currently right now we receive 25.8% of those funds. On the extension side, we are authorized to receive 20% of the extension funds that the 1862s receive, and we receive about 18% of that. And so I think first, and when we look at our capacity funds and our ability to provide capacity for our states as 1890 institutions, then we will really look first to see what we could do to close that gap. Closing the gap of 4.2% on ag research would bring our appropriation levels from about 67 million to about 77 million. And closing the 2% gap on the 1890 Cooperative Extension Program would bring our appropriation levels from about 57 million to 63 million dollars. I think that would be one of the big things that we could do to help increase the impact of our institutions. Second, and that was part of the question that came before, is how do we continue to, we have about 7 states that currently are not receiving, 7 universities and aren't receiving the one-to-one match from the states. And so better coordination with us and the states to see what we can do to help the states provide that critical resource to our institutions would go a long way. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you. Thank you for that input. Either of the additional 2 panelists like to weigh in on that question?
Thank you for the question. Great question. Just adding to what President Abdullah just mentioned, expanding or fully funding the centers of excellence. We have 3 centers that were funded, but having a center at each of the 19 institutions would go a long way. In our extension areas, we do great work and we work well with our 1862 partners. However, we have counties that we're not able to serve because we don't have, or the counties, it's a systemic matter, chicken and egg, have the resources from the counties in order to bring in the agents from the university to assist. And so being able to fully support in that area, so all the counties that are needed, we can do a better job of covering those low resource communities, are 2 other areas that I would add to the support. And on a more long-term and broader scale, looking at facilities, we do well with what we have, but if we are to continue to expand and meet the changing and dynamic workforce needs of this country in the agricultural sector, being able to have or acquire state-of-the-art facilities and renovation of facilities is definitely going to be a must so that our students continue to receive the high-quality education to prepare them for the workforce.
Very good. Thank you. Dr. Jones, any thoughts regarding what the
Well, I think the 2 panelists did a great job, but I would echo the facilities support that's needed. We have aging facilities. I think bringing our facilities into the 21st century and either updating them or new facilities that would be very important, I think, for the growth of our institutions and for the support that we can provide throughout our states.
Very good. Well, once again, thank you to all 3 of you for your continued leadership and the benefits that you bring to the students and communities. And Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ranking Member. Congresswoman Schreiner, your 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I come from the state of Washington, so this is my first education into 1890 land-grant universities, and I'm so grateful for the education and to learn about what you are doing with research and how much food nutrition research you're doing. So, you know, at a time when we have vacancies at the USDA, when we need more extension researchers, I am incredibly grateful. I'm also incredibly grateful that at a time when our food nutritional density and composition is changing with a changing climate, that you are at the forefront of that. I have a tangential question, and I don't even know if this is in the realm of what you feel comfortable speaking about, but I don't have a great sense of how many of your students go on to become farmers and ranchers. And my question is about this. We hear a lot about farmers of color not having the same access to loans, to loan forgiveness, to some of the financial help that other farmers get. We also know that our farmers are aging. A lot of them pass their farms down, but the farmers that I meet in my district who are young, they have a lot of trouble buying land, they're leasing land. They don't have the same foot up. And I'm thinking about this in terms of what has happened with housing in this country. And when you get locked out of actually owning that land, what does that mean for your future? I was just wondering if you could, I know it's tangential, if you could talk about that a little bit, if you could talk about if you're working in that realm and how we can support your students if they go on to become farmers and ranchers.
I thank you very much, Congresswoman Shire. I very much appreciate your question. There are some, of course, answers I think I can give anecdotally. I would tell you that there is a large percentage of our students that come from farmer and rancher backgrounds. Many of them have chosen Virginia State, and I imagine many of our 1890s, because, if you will, it is the family business, and they are interested in going into the family business. As a matter of fact, I might argue again, without statistics, that it's actually more of a challenge to get young people to go into food and ag sciences who have not previously been, if you will, haven't previously had the experience in food and ag sciences. And so many of our students have already have some experience in food and ag sciences. On the other question, we have a lot of experts in our 1890 community that are working on answering the questions that you put forth just now, in terms of how do we make sure that Black and minority farmers have access to capital, have access to the resources that they need in order to build their business. I regret that I wouldn't be able to give you definitive answers to some of those questions, but we stand at the ready to provide the answers for Congress to be able to have an impact on policy as we continue to move forward, to make sure that the food and ag science world is an equitable world.
I'd add to that. Thank you, Congressman Shire, for that question. We continue to try to expand our partnerships in order to address those very issues and concerns that you just raised. We're working with our local farm bureau and looking at developing an apprenticeship program in order to encourage and develop and build a pipeline for students who may have an interest or who come from farming backgrounds, particularly being here in the state of Mississippi. But I also would like to highlight that our extension program has a unique program that was funded by the state of Mississippi to help small and disadvantaged farmers gain access to capital and technical assistance who otherwise would not be able to attain credit through traditional financial credit sources. It's our small farm loan program that assists small farmers who endeavor to start new farm operations. So this is an area that I think is a niche for Alcorn State University that we're very much willing to have further discussions and share some of our lessons learned and how that program has worked to benefit small farmers here in the state of Mississippi. But I believe you address it through the partnerships with their local farm bureaus, through your state legislatures, as well as working with some of our own on-campus vendor partners, such as our food services, to expand opportunities for students and to address these very real issues that you brought to light.
I don't know if the time will allow for a response, given it's 10 seconds, but I think the youth development piece becomes really critical, and focusing in on how we work with young people through 4-H or through other development programs to expose them. I can't give you a number offhand of how many move immediately into the farming world or going back into that space. But I will say that President Abdullah is absolutely correct in that we have a much greater chance with those individuals who've been exposed. I think the scholarship program is going to help tremendously as we move forward. I do think we have to do even a better job of helping youth to understand the diversity of agriculture, and that agriculture actually is everything. And so how do we make that, if you will, sexy to them? But I would just go on to say, lastly, in terms of the technical support, that's a space that I think all of us, through our cooperative extension units, are doing a great job of providing that kind of technical experience to the limited resource farmers. And that's something we're very proud of. And that's something we do a great job as opposed to what's happening in the 1862 environment.
Thank you all very much.
Are on now. Congressman Lamalfa, thank you. I'm not sure if Congressman Lamalfa is with us. I see his icon there.
I'm right here,
There you
ma'am.
go.
Thank you.
Great.
Read some things here. So how's things?
Very good, very good. Thank you for being with us.
Sure,
Do
thank you.
you have questions for our witnesses?
Yeah, I just wanted to go over one real quick with Dr. Jones. Is that okay?
Of course, it's your time.
Okay. I'm just looking at the issues with campuses and the opening of them or reopening this year. I wondered what were some of the biggest issues you're able to get by with at Fort Valley State this fall in reopening and making things continue to work on a rural campus like that.
Well, thank you, Congressman Lamalfa, for that question. As you could imagine, it was a tremendous challenge trying to, ensure the safety and well-being of everyone, not just our students, faculty, and staff, but also visitors as well who came onto the campus community. As I mentioned earlier, the support we received through the CARES Act funding was enormous. We would not have been able to stand up our technology infrastructure in the way that we did. And even though we were in the face-to-face environment, we still had to move a lot of our services and programs into the virtual space because of the size of the groups. And I will say that the utilization of that technology, actually what we saw was a much larger number of students participating. The students did a great job of taking advantage of the resources that we had in place. But, just increasing our testing capacity to ensure that we can determine where the hot spots were and we could, mitigate further spread of the virus. That was just really challenging, staying on top of that. But our staff and faculty did a great job. As long as we kept them away from the parties, things went reasonably well. But we learned a lot, and I think as we are put our plans in for the spring semester, I think there are a number of changes that we've made that I think will enhance the spring face-to-face.
How's that affected, Dr. Jones? You were, I think, mentioning a bit earlier your research you're working on with animals and some of the synthetic products they need or that are used, and that you had success, according to my notes, on reducing usage of synthetic drugs in order to keep animal health. And so has your research been able to move fairly through this?
I think because of the PPE, I mean, we obviously had to put a lot of things in place for those the researchers who are spending time in the labs. And I think early on, it may have been a challenge, but as we learn more throughout the pandemic, I think we were able to move our research agenda forward. And, it's just, everyone had to learn how to operate or navigate in this new environment. But as I said in my opening remarks, quite frankly, I think we've learned a lot about during this pandemic that actually I think will help us to become even much more efficient as an institution and how we can leverage this technology going forward. But the research continued to move forward, slower at the early stages, but we've been able to move things along as we've learned more. As we started out early onto our community, we don't know what we don't know. And, as we learn more, we got better and better in this environment. But we're still, still going to be challenged, I think, in the spring semester.
Yeah, well, hang in there, sir. I think, I hope by spring that we have a lot better handle on the entire situation. So Madam Chairman, I'll yield back. Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Jones, for your time with us here today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for that information. And we do wish the best for our students, those who are operating remotely. That has its own unique challenges for them and their families. And, the health of our students who are operating back at home, back in person as well. We're very prayerful about that and, wish the best. And you all have such an enormous task in making sure that not only the students, but your faculty, staff, everyone stays safe on campuses. And we now have Congressman Shelley Pingree for your 5 minutes. Thank you so much for your leadership on so many issues related to agriculture and your work on the Appropriations Committee, which does so much of the work for appropriating the funds for these fantastic programs for the 1890s.
Great. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for holding this hearing. Like Representative Schreiner, we don't have an 1890 institution in our state. So it's been fascinating to hear from you and read the background, and really appreciate having this hearing and my colleagues joining in on this. I also wanted to just recognize when Representative Thompson asked you some of the questions about funding. As the chair mentioned, I'm on the Appropriations Committee and would be happy to follow up with all of you at another time about how to make sure that we're pushing for the funding levels that you asked for. I've been a longtime supporter of research. I'm a huge fan of cooperative extension. So to hear that there isn't parity on those issues is troubling to me, and would be happy to work with you on that. And also the understanding, I think one of you mentioned that seven of the 1890 institutions did not receive state parity, the one-to-one match. And that concerns me as well, given that states are suffering such revenue shortfalls. It's a very contentious issue in Congress about whether we will give them more funding, but my guess is as they experience shortfalls, it will make it even more difficult for them to meet that match. So would love to talk to you more about that. But let me just ask you a couple of specifics. Dr. Abdullah, you wrote Congress back in April that one of the immediate steps Congress could do would be to urge the United States Department of Agriculture to release your appropriated FY 2020 funding as soon as possible. And I know Representative Adams did a letter on this, but I'm interested to have an update on that. When did the USDA ultimately release your 2020 funding, and did they issue some guidance about the carryover authority?
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. One, I appreciate your question. The funds were released, and we did get parity as it relates to the carry forward issue. I really appreciate you bringing up and helping to champion parity with states, with our states, and to make sure that we can get all of our institutions to have quality access to the match. So thank you.
Sure. I mean, I really appreciate the work that you're doing to help our next generation of farmers. It's so critically important with the average age of our farmers going up. And like I said, I'd be happy to work with Mr. Bishop on that. I'm sure it's something that he strongly supports. Another interesting question for me is there have been a lot of challenges around the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NIFA, it's called, at the USDA. It is the arm of the federal government that provides land grants, their capacity funds, and administers competitive grants. So I've been really concerned about the relocation, the delays, the loss of staff. So if any of the witnesses have a comment just on how has your experience been in dealing with NIFA in the relocation, do you think currently the agency has the capacity to provide you with the support that you need? If any of you want to comment.
I'll be glad to address it, at least from our perspective. I mean, it's no secret. I think that things were, because of the move, certainly a little slower, but that was to be expected in terms of response time, we know it's a great challenge. I think the bigger loss is the loss of the knowledge and, some of that expertise that was there, and also just knowing, who to call. We had the luxury of knowing who to call, but I think it certainly has been a challenge. I think they've been working, I think, tirelessly trying to get up to speed to support our institutions, and we've had great collaboration with the senior team, if you will, and have tried to work through any of the challenges that we faced. But I think it was expected. I guess what will be most interesting is how we're able to move the needle forward next year, and will we be able to pick up that response time and the knowledge base that will be needed to support all of us.
Any other comments?
I appreciate your question. Likewise, to add with President Jones, the delayed communication has delayed some of our programming and our ability to move funding. Things that used to take a month takes 3 to 4 months. And so we are concerned as we begin to restaff, which we anticipate will help move some of these challenges off the table, that there is a focus on diversity to make sure that we have equitable representation amongst the staffers that they're bringing on board.
Great. Well, thank you again for your presentations today, and I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. This time, I'd like to ask my very good friend, Congressman Rodney Davis, for his 5 minutes. Rodney, why were
Hang on, you cut out.
you were smiling as if you knew I was going to say it was you and that I was going to say we were good friends.
Hey, I am excited and very accepting of that gesture because we are good friends. But I knew, because I usually have to sit next to Doug Lamalfa, and I'm on his left side, which is his bad ear. So it's difficult to talk to him in the hearing room.
You'll have to pass notes.
You know what? We will, and then we'll probably get chastised by you the next hearing we have. But hey, look, I hope all the witnesses know how much fun we have together in a bipartisan way on this committee, because we're excited to be able to talk about what your universities mean to our entire higher education system, especially when it comes to ag. And I've really been focusing in my career here on ag research. I'm proud to have helped form the Ag Research Caucus with another really good friend on this committee, Jimmy Panetta. Jimmy, I don't want to scare the witnesses, but if it's any consolation to each of you, Jimmy looks worse in person than he does on video. So you'll be fine when you see him. Don't jump when he gets to his questions. But the Ag Research Caucus and the 13 colleges, universities, and community colleges that I represent in Illinois, they include the University of Illinois, another land grant institution that has been partnering with Tuskegee University as an active partner in the AI Farms project, the Artificial Intelligence for Future Agricultural Resilience Management and Sustainability Institute. And that's, the U of I's $20 million new AI institute that's supported by NIFA and the National Science Foundation. And this project, working together, is going to bolster technologies that contribute to production practices, digital agriculture, and also help support women and minority farmers through research on livestock operation, autonomous farming, and also soil and health environment. But I'm very concerned because I represent so many universities. I have 3 kids in one of those universities that I represent. I know how COVID has impacted their lives as students and also the university's capabilities. And speaking of ag research, the only question I have here, and I'll throw it open to whomever wants to answer first, how has COVID impacted some of your ag research projects? Has it delayed them? Has it made it harder to move the needle forward on important ag research at your universities? And go ahead, and whoever wants to answer first, just unmute yourself.
Thank you, Congressman Davis. The answer to your question, of course, is quite diverse. There are some of our faculty, some of our researchers who are involved in clinical research that may only include a few people that are able to conduct their research by and large the way that they were conducting it before COVID. But the vast majority of researchers at Virginia State have been impacted by COVID-19, and particularly those that are doing more applied and applicable research that are in the communities, working with farmers and ranchers. Now understanding that you have to maintain a certain level of distance, we have to make sure that we keep everybody safe. It has been a challenge across the entire research enterprise, not just in ag, and not just, of course, at Virginia State, as you mentioned, University of Illinois. And it is a challenge that I think all universities are trying to do their best to meet. Additionally, the lack of travel. As 1890 institutions, we have a lot of collaborations in and amongst ourselves, but also with other 1862s like University of Illinois. And the lack of travel has meant that researchers being able to get access and hands-on access to others researchers' research has been quite a bit more difficult. And so this is a new world. It's of course that research challenge isn't any different from the challenge in the classroom. It isn't different from the challenges that we all face with the pandemic, but it has been a challenge, and it is something that we're going to continue to have to look at.
Great, great. Dr. Nate?
Yes, I would just add, in addition to what President, and I appreciate the question, it has had an impact. We've been able to adjust as time has moved on, and we've learned some things. But overall, we've slowed in our production. In addition to what we do in terms of partnerships with other 1862 or 1890 institutions, but also the research opportunities or the research projects with other ag-related agencies. If those agencies have shut down, we've not been able to complete some of those projects, and we've had to do various extensions. But we're hopeful that as we move into the next year, we continue to learn more about the pandemic and how to make the adjustments that we're able to carry out the outcomes of our projects. But overall, the research has definitely been impacted. And one area that I would throw out there, with the restrictions and the social distancing, it creates additional challenges in our facility spaces and how the researchers are able, or how many people they can have in at one time in order to conduct the research, and whether or not we're able to or have the additional resources to renovate or modify the research space to be able to carry out the research. So it's been a challenge, but we continue to work through it.
Great. I see I'm out of time. Sorry, Dr. Jones, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Madam Chair. I apologize. I've got to go to another hearing, so forgive me, and I'll be happy to read the record later. Thanks, everyone. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Our next member is Congressman Panetta of California. Your 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman Plaskett. I appreciate this opportunity. Let me give you some better light because of the comments of my good friend Rodney Davis. It won't make it better for you, but at least you'll see some things, some aspects besides my outline of my big nose and big ears. Look, I think this says a lot that in just looking at the makeup of the Brady Bunch boxes that I'm looking at right now and the makeup of the membership on BHR, and it says a lot about Chairwoman Plaskett's leadership, but it also says about the makeup, a lot about the makeup of the Ag Committee and our concern with these issues that we're listening to today, as well as the research issues that we're all focused on for our districts. And you got a number of members who are literally from all over the country that are on this committee, from California all the way up to Maine. And I think that says a lot that, even someone like me who comes from the Central Coast of California, as Chair Plaskett likes to say, the salad bowl of the world, I do not have any land grant institutions in my district. And I think a few members on this don't. But the fact that we want to hear about these because we know how important they are to our agriculture, to our research for agriculture, I think says a lot about this committee. And so I just have to point that out to you and how much we appreciate you being here and taking the time to prepare and to present your information to all of us so that we can learn from you. As I said, I come from the Central Coast of California, and we have a lot of specialty crops there. And it's not the types of crops that my good friend Rodney Davis, although he does have some specialty crops in his district, just a very little, he has mostly the types of crops where you just send machines through. We don't. we have the types of crops where it takes people. It takes people to get in there and to have that human discernment that technology actually hasn't caught up with. So we have yet to mechanize appropriately when it comes to the harvesting of our specialty crops. But I also know that, you know, and as you probably are well aware of, in our district and in our colleges that we have, two 4 years and 4 2-year colleges there, we have a lot of, our curriculum is a lot about farm workers. There's a lot about Cesar Chavez. There's a lot about immigration. And so I was just wondering if that plays any role in your curriculum. Do you talk about the contributions of farm workers to our agriculture in your curriculum?
Congressman Panetta, thank you very much for that question. The answer is yes. We think it's really important that our students understand not just what it takes to move the food and agricultural industry, but to understand the history of food and agriculture and how people, in most cases underrepresented, or those immigrants or former slaves or slaves, the roles that those people played in the building of the food and ag system here in the United States of America. So yes, sir, that's a very, very much an important part of our curriculum.
Mr. Jones, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that piece is, I think, very important to, you know, helping those who plan to go into these careers, that they have an understanding of the history. And so I think that part is very vital and probably something that's very special to and unique to each of our institutions.
And I apologize for calling you Mr. Dr. Jones. Thank you. And Dr. Nave, would you agree?
Yes, I do agree. And it's not about just giving them the introduction, but making sure that we like to weave it throughout the curriculum, as well as in any co-curricular activities that we put on board. Ag is really important to this institution as well as to the state. And so we work to make sure that students are well educated. But I would also add that in our extension, as we are working in the communities with our 4-H programs, we also include that education in those program areas as well, to make sure that we are responsible in educating our citizenry.
And obviously, and I'm getting close to the end of my time, but real quickly, you know, obviously with your institutions and your curriculum and everything that you are doing, you're doing a great job getting people into your colleges. But my question has to come with, what are the barriers once they graduate college, what you're seeing now? And what are you doing to help them subsequent to their education? Anybody wants to take that on in my last 12 seconds?
Well, I think it's very important, sir, that we have a sense of lifelong learning, that we continue to educate our young people to be in the high demand careers so they can get going right away. And then, of course, part of that is, you know, kind of COVID related. As COVID has started to hit our country, how do we adapt to make sure that people are ready for the new workplace? So we are all committed to making sure our kids are prepared.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. Madam Chair, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as you heard, we are really have members from all over the country. And I would now invite the member from Indiana, Mr. Baird, for his 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's fascinating because of my ag background to hear the direction that the universities have taken. And so I certainly appreciate all the witnesses being here. I have a couple of questions that I think might be worthwhile. One of those being, I think, Dr. Nave, you mentioned 4-H was an important part of the program. I think you also mentioned that artificial intelligence and drones. So would you mind elaborating a little more on how you integrate your program with the Extension Service? And I'm a great supporter, just as Representative Pingree is, of the extension. So I'd like to have comments from the witnesses on that area.
Thank you, Congressman Beard, for your question. I appreciate it. 4-H is a very vital program here at the university. And so we've been working to extend and expand the number of 4-H locations that we have throughout the state so that we have agents who are available and ready and continuously recruiting students into those programs. We see it as vital to our pipeline, to the workforce pipeline in moving those students from 4-H into ag discovery into viable careers in the agriculture area. In making sure that the research, we have research informed or research-based information. Our extension agents work hand in hand with our faculty and staff so that we can translate what we're learning in our research areas in the classrooms back out into the communities with our 4-H programs. So it has been a significant push to expand the number of 4-H partnerships that we have throughout the state.
Jones, do you have a comment? Dr. Abdullah?
I do. I do. We are very excited about our 4-H programs. It's one of the, in my mind, highlights of our extension enterprise. We work very closely with Virginia Tech for Virginia Cooperative Extension, and our two 4-H and youth development agents are Dr. Chantel Wilson and Dr. Maurice Jones, who do an incredible job of developing material for our students here. And we want to make sure that as an 1890, as Virginia State University, that we are providing those quality opportunities for all young people, right? Making sure that whether those who come from rural or urban environments, whether they're Black or white, that they get an opportunity to participate in 4-H. So we're very active in it.
Dr. Jones, are you?
What I'll say, and I echo both presidents' comments, but in terms of your question around the sort of the technology or precision agriculture, artificial intelligence, and big data, I think the technology piece is one that is vital to moving forward in this area. And one of our centers that we hope to have funded in the future is the Center for Excellence in Emerging Technologies, which Fort Valley is positioned well to provide tremendous support in this area. But I think that's a space that many of us are providing great support, but we need the expanded resources in order to accelerate what we are doing in these areas. So that's something that we think it would be important moving forward. The additional funding for the Centers for Excellence is I think, critical.
Thank you. I have one other question. The discussion about the ability to get into farming, and when you look at conventional agriculture, the agriculture we have in the Midwest, it is almost prohibitive for a young farmer to buy the land, buy the machinery, and get in. So the challenge for young people to get into agriculture, production agriculture, is a tremendous challenge all across the industry. But I will say my observation at this point, and I'll get you to comment. Well, I've only got 10 seconds, so I guess my observation would be with restaurants and so on wanting to know exactly where their food's coming from. I think there are more opportunities today for young people to get into some of these specialty items than I've seen in the past years. And so if you want to, I'm out of time, I guess. So just nod your head if you agree. If you don't, just shake your head no. And I thank you, and I yield back. Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that is a topic that we've talked about so much. Congresswoman Xochitl Torres Small, so good to see you. And thank you. And your questions coming from New Mexico.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. And they are, of course, state's land grant institution. They're also a Hispanic serving institution. And so what we've been talking about the importance of diversity for the future of our ag economy is crucial. And I think a clear example of that is right now facing COVID-19, because our cooperative extension service has been able to use existing routes of communication with key groups of individuals who are especially vulnerable in the wake of COVID-19. Also in the industry, in the ag industry, that is so vital as we face the supply chain challenges that we are seeing, to reaching and serving our entire country. So Dr. Nave, I'd love to hear from you any work that you've done to help communicate as a trusted resource the challenges of COVID-19 and support our ag economy and our diverse populations.
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. I appreciate, great question. We have utilized our extension network in order to translate information about COVID-19. Some of our program has been specific, focused on helping parents understand how to explain the different guidelines associated with COVID-19, being a resource for parents who may not have internet access, that they can come to some of our centers so that their students can complete their homework, that they can participate in classroom activities. Our extension agents and ag has also partnered with our School of Nursing to be able to go around in our communities to provide healthcare services and address the health disparities issues. But there's we have a mobile bus, a mobile clinic that we're able to use and partner with ag. But I will tell you that there's an opportunity for us to expand. I think this came up in an earlier question. Our 1862 partners have the resources to be in more communities, and we know that there are more low resource communities that we need to be at to provide these additional services to address the health disparities, the food insecurities, the knowledge gap. But the resources right now, our resources only allow us to be in 19 counties. So as we're able to procure additional resources, we can do a much thorough job and be of more benefit to more of the low resource communities in in the state of Mississippi to bring and address some of these matters that's being discussed today.
Dr. Nave, I'm so glad you brought up additional resources. I wholly agree. And of course, funds through NEFA is a fundamental part of that. We've talked about that. But another part of it is I had the chance to work with Congressman Johnson on Farming Support to States Act, which would get money directly to state farming agencies, as well as our cooperative extension services. And this provides another, especially in the midst of a crisis, an opportunity to directly fund our cooperative extensions. Dr. Jones, you mentioned in your testimony, in your written testimony, some of the work you've done on meat packing plants to help address supply chains issues. And I'd love to hear how additional resources going directly to our cooperative extension services could help Georgia and help our supply chain network.
Thank you very much, and Congresswoman. And that's an area that the pandemic actually put a significant spotlight on as the COVID challenges that we had throughout the state and some of the processing centers. It created some real challenges, particularly for some of those small farmers. But what we learned during the pandemic is that even mid-size and larger farmers were impacted tremendously. This gave us an opportunity to working with Congressman Bishop and some of our local, our Commissioner of Agriculture, the need for us to expand our processing facility for red meat. And we've been staffing up to many of our processors that are not processors, but our farmers were sending their meat to be processed across state lines. And so in order for us to help meet that need, we had to pause for a moment to staff up so we can start supporting this important endeavor. And that food's not going to waste as a result of not having access. So we see that as being very important and we're looking forward to continuing to expand that. But we need more resources. For example, our meat processing facility, we need to enhance the cooler space in order for us to support. We could do more if we had a larger cooler space. So indeed, a very important priority for our university, and I appreciate our staff for stepping up during these challenging times.
Thank you. My time's expired.
Thank you so much. Congressman Johnson, it is now your 5 minutes. Thank you for waiting patiently for your opportunity to speak. I see your camera is on, and he may have stepped away from his seat. Well, we'll come back to Mr. Johnson. Congressman Lawson, Big Al.
Hey, thank you. It's so great to see you.
It's good to see you, sir. Thank you for all your work in Florida and capital of Tallahassee on behalf of all of these. Oh, hold on, Al. Mr. Johnson came back. Now you're going to get screamed at. I told you the day wouldn't end before that happened.
Yeah, I choose a particularly inopportune time to go to the bathroom. I had the list, I knew when I was up, and I thought there was enough room between Xochitl and me, and there wasn't.
Me and your teenagers. We will get
that's exactly right. Well, I apologize to our distinguished panel.
Go right ahead. Please go right ahead. You're
very good.
5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. Well, I do think the testimony's been fantastic. And I know we've talked a bit about how some of us are from parts of the country that don't have this group of 1890s. And so for me, it has been, I mean, honestly, to hear the presidents of these institutions talk about their efforts to robustly build this equity in agriculture has been an absolute treat. And I want to weave some other institutions into the conversation as well, because I think there's an opportunity for us to learn. And clearly, it's not just the job of the 1890s to build this equity in agriculture, for traditionally disadvantaged students. And so it's been wonderful. I mean, in South Dakota, we have a land grant university that's, an 1862 institution, but I think they understand the importance of stepping up and being a part of this societal change as well. And so they have the Wakini initiative, which is the New Beginnings program is an outcropping of that. Wakini started at South Dakota State University. Our appropriators have invested in the New Beginnings program, which is an expansion of this program, which really attempts to identify Native American students and to recruit them to this land grant university and to retain them, just critically important in states like South Dakota with a sizable Native American population. And so I think that is similar to the kind of work that the 1890s are doing. But I also want to ask the presidents for their advice, because we have 1994s, the tribal colleges in South Dakota, a number of them. And so for those of us who want to continue to support the mission of these 1994s and in the area of agriculture, I mean, I would ask our esteemed panelists, what advice do you have for us so that we can support these tribal colleges?
Thank you very much, Congressman Johnson, for your question. I think it's a fantastic question. We all partner well, I believe, with our 1862 partner. And we understand that the work that we do, that while we lead the work, and while it is, of course, a part of our ingrained mission, that it's really everyone's work, and that everyone has to really be a part of that work. So I appreciate you bringing that to the table. I think in terms of how we support the 1890s and the 1994s, I think is to look at them as the primary leaders on certain aspects of projects in the respective states. I think for so many, they look to the 1862s to really be the leader of much of the work that happens in the state, and that the 1890s and sometimes the 1994s become a secondary player in those projects. For some projects, for projects that specifically deal with the inequities of the state, specifically deal with making sure that marginalized people are engaged and involved. I think it's critically important to make sure that the 1890s and the 1994s are the leads, that they are, that the funds are invested in an appropriate and an equitable manner, and to allow the institutions, your institutions and our institutions, to really have that opportunity to do that. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, thank you. Other panelists?
I would thank you for the question. Great question. I concur with the president. Meaningful partnerships and collaboration so that we can cross-pollinate, having a clear understanding of mission and where there's compatibility, such that you're not pulling people out of their niches or extending them beyond what the capabilities and resources are. And then in understanding that in some of these partnerships that there more resources may need to go to the 1890 or the 1994s, simply from a leveraging perspective or because of the inequity that has historically existed. Those institutions may not be at the same place. So in that partnership, defining equitable distribution of resources beyond the dollar amount, but looking at the impact of how that funding is going to help advance the partnership and the collaboration so that both institutions are able to see some measurable gains.
The only thing I would add is that I think one of the things that is often not known is how much we collaborate as 1890 system with the 1862s and other institutions across the country. Many of our research projects, one that I mentioned in my submission, spoke about multiple institutions, over 30 scientists being engaged. I think that's our pathway forward. It's the opportunity for us to continue to collaborate and partner. The president is absolutely correct that we all have to work within those boundaries or where our expertise is, but solving today's and tomorrow's problems is going to require greater collaboration from our institutions. And quite frankly, that's something that I believe the 1890s do very well, probably better than most. And I think there are opportunities for further engagement.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jones, and thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence on my time. I would just close by saying, thanking the presidents of these institutions. I mean, clearly, our country is strongest when we are providing, education, clearly, that is the hallmark, that is the key, and we have a better nation because of the tremendous students that your institutions have turned out decade after decade, and just honestly, thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions as well as your remarks. Congressman Lawson, your 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's a real privilege to be here with you and to have and welcome our guests to the committee. I'm a Florida A&M University graduate, and so, and I grew up in the country and grew up farming. And my father-in-law taught in agriculture at FAMU. And probably his son, who finished from Tuskegee also, was at Maryland Eastern Shore, Henry Brooks. I'm sure that some of y'all would know Henry Brooks. And so it has been my mission to make sure the 1890 institutions get what they deserve for the remarkable work that they've done over all these years. One of the questions that I have, and this will be for everyone, is, and I've been concerned about it, recruiting and retaining students and faculty is a key needed in the 1890 institution to succeed in the various research mission. How has COVID-19 pandemic impact your ability to attract both students and faculty and provide them with resources to continue conducting their research? And that's open to everyone.
Thank you, Congressman Lawson. And it's good to see you, sir. Of course, I did time at your alma mater, and so I'm a fan of Florida A&M University. I wanted to say this. I think first I'm thankful for the funds, the CARES Act that came to higher education and came to our 1890 institutions, because those funds went a long way to making sure that during this very difficult time this very difficult financial time, that we were able to do the best we could to make sure that we could retain our talent, our faculty and staff at Virginia State and across our 1890s, but also so that we could maintain our programs so that we could recruit students into our programs. I think as we continue to go forward with the kind of financial uncertainty, we remain thankful for any future funding that comes through for higher education and for our 1890s to make sure that, again, that we are able to keep people working, keep talent in the building, and keep students coming to our institutions. So thank you very much. It's the work of Congress has been incredible to helping us continue to go forward.
Right. Anyone else care to comment?
Thank you, Congressman Lawson, for the question. Great question. It has been a challenge. We did start our freshman class off as smaller than what has historically been the case. But as we continue to look at our recruitment efforts and understanding what works and being more intentional, the funding that was provided that we're extremely thankful for to recruit the students through the USDA Scholars Program was very instrumental in assisting the university with being able to attract and retain the students, because it helps make the educational experience affordable and they don't leave with the saddle with the student loan debt that makes, when they start their first job, their income is prohibitive. In terms of faculty and staff, more on the way of research. It's, even if we're able to be competitive in terms of salaries or close to competitive, having the infrastructure and the facilities that these researchers are able to conduct state-of-the-art innovative research becomes the next challenge for our institutions. Having resources to secure postdocs and to support graduate students in the lab, other areas that we've seen across other fields where there has been additional funding opportunities or programs that those different departments can attack or use to attract staffing. So I think it's a multifaceted approach between scholarship dollars, retention dollars, and facility infrastructure in order to make sure that we keep the highest quality talent in our institutions.
Okay, thank you. And you know, since the chairwoman only gave me 10 minutes, I'm gonna try to get in another question. Well, anyway, for addressing food insecurity and education, and educating our ranchers and farmers on future threats to their crops, I'm very proud of what the 1980, our ability in 1980 ability to make an impact in the community through their existing services. What way do you foresee that COVID-19 pandemic have an impact on how 1890 land grant institutions can positively support their local communities? Because I really got a district that stretches around 300 miles and a lot of rural areas in between, and we have a lot of food insecurity, so becoming very important. So I just wanted to see what any of you all in the time I got left to comment on that.
I would just say that, you know, certainly the greatest challenge I think we face with extension is the travel bans and our, you know, sort of inability to be as visible as we've had to, and the, you know, sort of technology challenges that we face, realizing that not all communities have the, you know, the same access to even the technology. It's easy enough to say, hey, we'll just move everything to the virtual space, but that's assuming that the person on the other line has the ability to receive the communication.
And Dr. Jones, I'm going to cut you off real minute because I really need a response on that. What can we do on this committee to help these universities more?
Well, you know, and I would say there's been a theme around infrastructure. I think that that's critical moving forward and helping us to, I mean, you know, helping us to move the needle forward. We've got to, from a recruitment standpoint, retention perspective, we need to really focus on that area.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, I yield back. I know I got extra time for about 5 more minutes, but I'm going to yield back to you.
You know, you got away there because of your own educational background. I gave you a little leeway there, but Now I'm going to bring the co-chair of the HBCU caucus to bring us home for her questionings, Congresswoman Dr. Alma Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You have run a marvelous committee today. I want to thank everyone for their participation. I especially want to thank our speakers and those who champion our young people at our universities. And I am an HBCU graduate twice. I'm proud. I did do the shout out to my brother in Florida. I gave you the little snake thing that you all do down there. But anyway, let me say to all of our participants today, thank you each for serving on the executive committee, and Dr. Abdullah for your chairmanship there. I want to just follow up on some things and put some things really on the record. Yes, we have 7 1890s that didn't receive a full match, but I've got to just be real honest. Having served for 20 years in the North Carolina House, I worked year after year to secure a 1-1 match for the federal funding, particularly for North Carolina A&T. But at the same time, our state's 1862 institutions were easily able to secure their matching funds. So I don't want us to hide behind COVID because there was inequity prior to COVID, but yet there were opportunities for state legislatures, even my own, to find the matches for our 1862 schools. So we got to fix that. You know, it's about priorities, and our schools, our 1890s, their HBCUs, they deserve the same equitable funding. So I just want to put that out there because it has bothered me for a mighty long time. So I do think we need to fix that, and I want to thank Congresswoman Pingree for raising that. But we're talking about a loss of $51 million in funding that these 7 institutions have lost over the years. So I believe Congress can do some more to fix it. But let me just move on to, since Brother Al mentioned something about our facilities, I want to tell you that one of my biggest priorities for the incoming Congress is an HBCU infrastructure. I just believe that whatever infrastructure we do, we've got to carve something out for there that supports our 1890 as far as the 1890 facilities grant program. So my question is, what can, in terms of the best support for infrastructure needs on your campuses, particularly in the agriculture department, how can Congress or this committee assist in that? And everybody who'd like to give us a response, we welcome that. And I do have one more question, so we can be brief on it. I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. So who wants to go first?
Congresswoman Adams, first of all, thank you for your steadfast support and your great advocacy. It hasn't gone unnoticed, and we appreciate what you continue to do for our communities. This idea around the infrastructure becomes so critical for each of our institutions. Another quick thing that I would just mention is that, you know, it's great, you know, to receive these resources and on grants, but one of the challenges we face is that oftentimes we get an allocation, and the allocation is it's allocated over a 5-year period. So, for example, my Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, you're waiting almost 5 years before you receive the funding, and in our state, we don't have the ability to move that project forward until all funds are secured. And so, you know, our community is on hold for 5 years until we are able to do that. If there was a way for those funds to be allocated up front, and I think we would be able to, I think, do much more. But that has been one of the greatest challenges our institution has faced.
Okay, so we can move on to the other 2 individuals. We got like 30 seconds. And if you could give us your quick response, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Congressman Adams. We're very appreciative of the facilities funds we currently receive, but they allow us to do iterative projects. The infrastructure to me, and in speaking with my dean, dean of ag, is more on a larger scale for us to be able to transition and move into some of these emerging technology areas, and to be able to have the truly state-of-the-art facilities that in order to train the 21st century workforce.
Okay.
Congresswoman Adams, thank you again for all of your support for HBCUs. And I would just like to ask that we increase the FY 2020 appropriation of 1890 facilities grants from 20.5 million to 30 million. That would be very, very good.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm out of time. You know, I can talk some more, but I'll yield back right now. Again, thanks everybody for your participation. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Dusty, Congressman Johnson, do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to give?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I mean, I think we all know too well that there are chapters in our nation's history, particularly related to race, that are not a source of pride. But when I look at the chapters in our nation's history that are worthy of pride, frankly, the creation of the 1890s institutions is among them. And our panelists today are adding additional pages to those chapters, because we know that our nation has a need for leadership in agriculture. And it is a need that is going to be even bigger in the days to come than it has been in the past. And our panelists and their wonderful colleges and universities are fulfilling an obligation our country has to provide educational opportunities to students in historically disadvantaged areas and from populations, and marrying those together, the need for ag leadership and the obligation to provide this great educational training is something that our panelists are making happen every single day. And I just want to thank them for being authors of the pages of those chapters of pride.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And the work in South Dakota and other locations with the colleges, the 1994 colleges and Native Americans is so vitally important. And we know that the 1890 colleges will offer whatever support, lessons learned, best practices, so that they can continue to be successful and continue to educate those marginalized communities as well. We're all in this together. I'm so grateful that we were able to have this hearing, and I want to thank the staff for putting this together. I want to particularly thank Alma Adams and her staff for the guidance and the support that they provided to us as well, and to our testifiers. We can all agree that our students are a primary concern as we work through this pandemic and even before the pandemic. The next generation of farmers deserve substantive funding to support important research initiatives. Under my subcommittee jurisdiction, I look forward to supporting existing Farm Bill provisions that will assist in the success of ag programs and ag students. Support for the 1890 institutions is strong on this committee. That is evident in the 2018 Farm Bill, with that legislation providing critical support for scholarship, centers of excellence, and addressing issues to ensure equity between the 1890s and the 1862s. While I'm proud of the achievements we've secured in the 2018 Farm Bill, there is more to be done to support our students, our researchers, our extension professionals. The pandemic and the challenges associated with it have underscored the existing issues that were already there. The fact that more work needs to be done to support your institutions. To the witnesses, thank you so much for your testimony. As you can see on this committee, you have support from many, many sectors in this country. Also, we have overlap with individuals who are appropriators. I know that you all not only work with Congresswoman Pingree, but also Sanford Bishop, who chairs the Agriculture Subcommittee on the Appropriations Committee and is always available to our HBCUs and our 1890s. As we look ahead to the next Congress and to the next Farm Bill, I look forward to continuing to work with you all and my colleagues on the House Agriculture Committee to further support the 1890 system and the communities that you serve. Under the rules of the committee, the record of today's hearing will remain open for 10 calendar days. To receive additional material, any supplemental written responses from the witnesses to any questions posed by a member, any additional information you would like to be on the record. This hearing of the Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research is adjourned. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful holiday season. Please stay safe.